Welcome to Parenting on Purpose, a podcast where we discuss parenting topics to help you raise your children intentionally so that they find their unique purpose, place, and contribution to the world. My guests will be sharing childhood stories that have impacted their adult life to help us understand why parenting on purpose is so important. I will also answer your questions on how to raise children to be successful inside and outside the classroom. I'm your host, Abiera Bolu. I've been a teacher for over 15 years, teaching children as young as 4 all the way to age 18. I believe that a successful life is a life lived on purpose for a purpose. So our guest today is Tolu Osula. Hello, Tolu.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm so excited to have you here. Tolu is the author of His Treasured Possession, a fantastic book. I read this book in one sitting, no kidding. Okay, maybe I went to the loo or maybe I had something to eat, but literally I sat there. A fantastic book that tells us your story, your childhood story, and how you got from that point to where you are now. There's some very interesting things and a lot of stuff in there would help our parents and also help young girls growing up. So Tolu, thank you for coming here to share your childhood story. How would you just introduce the book to us?
Wow. So His Treasured Possession is a book that I dedicated to every young girl, every woman who is in a place of loneliness, feeling disvalued for one reason or the other, with a sense of powerlessness and confusion about who they are. And it's just to let them know that they are not alone. And, you know, that's the whole point of this book, really.
That's amazing, Tolu. Honestly, in reading that, I felt your compassion as you explained some quite tragic stories, some sad stories. I felt your love throughout. It was like you were pouring yourself out in your book, not just to say, look at what happened to me. It was to say, listen, I went through this. I've come out the other side and I'm here to help you. And I thought you're such a beautiful heart. I had to ask you to be a guest. So thanks again for agreeing. So what I'll do is I will just touch on a few things. The first thing you start to talk about is the fact that you lost your mom at the age of 3.
Yeah.
And how much of your mom do you remember?
Oh, nothing really, to be honest. Nothing, which is quite strange because I think, nothing, because I think even, you know, the fact that I lost her at that age of 3, she was already taken ill for, I think, a couple of maybe years or months before she finally passed away. So I can't really remember any memory.
That's interesting, and sorry to hear that, you know, and because you show in your book, you mentioned that, you know, she passed away, and were you the youngest in your family?
Yes, I'm the last of 7.
7.
To 7. Yeah.
Wow. And so, in a sense, basically, you were raised by your dad. How would you describe that? Because I've read it and it was quite interesting, but I'd like you to describe that to the listeners.
Yeah, I would say I was raised by my dad and, you know, probably some of my siblings, my older sister. But when it comes to my dad, I mean, my dad, you know, he's a hardworking man. Even in his 80s now, he still wants to work. He still plays golf. So I can remember that, you know, he sent me to some of the best schools in Nigeria. He would give me anything I asked for. You know, he was always there if I needed something, you know. But for me, just looking back now, the emotional aspects that I wanted from him wasn't there. So he was a lovely man. He would, you know, he provided for me, like you said, send me to all the best schools, some of the best schools in Nigeria. Yeah, and he did his best that he could. You know, we went to church together. You know, we prayed together. Yeah.
Right. That's so interesting. So what you're saying is, whilst you feel like you had the things that you needed and putting you in to the best schools as you remember and all of that, what I found in your book and what you've just mentioned here as well is that emotional connection wasn't really there.
Yeah.
And from your book, how you explained it is you didn't feel loved.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I don't know if this is a cultural thing, because I, as a child, I never heard my dad saying to me that he loves me. So and I never heard him saying to, you know, any of my other siblings that he loves them. So again, I'm just trying to reflect now, because is this a a cultural thing, and I just pray that, you know, in terms of culture, everything is changing now, hopefully in Nigeria. Yeah. So
Yeah, I hear what you're saying because sometimes, a lot of times, parents think that all you need is a roof over your head, food, to eat, go to the best schools, and that's their job done. But there's this emotional aspect that is missing. And I want you to explain to the listeners what that did for you. Never hearing your dad say he loved you, never feeling loved, and never even hearing him say to your siblings, what did that do to you?
wow. I think for me, that made me to seek attention wrongly, because, you know, I was always looking for that male figure outside to cuddle me, to tell me nice and lovely things, which I didn't get from my dad. So that definitely, looking back now, made me to seek attention in the wrong places.
That's interesting. Honestly, that's a common story. You hear that a lot where the child starts to seek attention elsewhere when they don't get it at home. And this is what I mean when I say to parents that it can yield a kind of response from the child that we don't want. And
Yeah.
then we get upset with the child for what they're doing, but don't realize that it can be rectified with that emotional connection. So you talk about this in your book, the fact that even though you sought attention from these other male figures and all of that, you still found it very difficult to empathize with people. And you found yourself incapable of forming compassionate relationships. I thought that was so deep. Why was that?
Yeah, again, I think because, you know, like I said, I lost my mom when I was 3 years old. I observed that, I didn't see, maybe I couldn't remember, but, you know, even beyond that age 3 and growing up into my teens, I can't really remember seeing anybody around me being emotional, you know, in terms of, you know, crying or, you know, expressing themselves. So I didn't know how to do that for a very long time, even up to, you know, it was just recently that we lost somebody through COVID, you know, and I cried. No, it wasn't actually, it wasn't then. It was recently, because I'm doing a master's degree in counseling children and young people. And for the very first time, I had to go to a therapist. So that's one of our requirements to do this course. And my first session, my therapist said to me, because I was saying all these things that happened and I still put on this brave face. And she said to me, it seems like you struggle to cry. Why is that? And that really broke me, you know, and I reflected on that. And from then on, you know, I've started to express myself, you know, even when my children are here, I can cry. It's okay to cry. I'm not a super, you know, a super woman beings, because I want to help them to see that, you know, they can express themselves, which is what I did not observe when I was growing up.
This is the thing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you. I feel like a lot of times we try and stop our children from expressing their feelings, thinking that by suppressing it, we're making them stronger. But
Yeah.
actually, it's creating other problems because these feelings need an outlet.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean, I heard somebody said recently, I can't remember who said it, that, you know, God gave us those teardrops
Mm-hmm.
was for a reason, is to
Mm-hmm.
cry. So,
Yeah.
and so, when my son saw me cry, he said, "Mommy, why are you crying?" I said, "It's okay to cry. We've just lost somebody, so it's okay."
Yeah.
Because I think as parents, sometimes we forget and we put on this mask.
Yeah.
This bravery face, anything happen, we don't want our children to really see our true self. So for me, it's quite important now that I'm able to express myself, my emotions, even in front of my children, and that is okay.
Yeah. It's,
Mm.
reading through your book, I thought, wow, you were quite young and felt like you had to, even when you describe it as being forced to go to church.
Yeah,
I had to pick up on that because your dad is an elder in church, sat at the front,
yeah,
and you felt like you were forced to go to church. So when you couple being forced to go to church, and this is a typical story for a lot of people, and you match that up with a lack of emotional attention from your dad, you
mm.
started to devise quite clever ways to get what you needed, even when you were at church. Can you explain this to us, please?
Yeah. So I mean, sometimes when we go to church, the days, the Sundays, I don't manage to pretend that I'm not feeling well, and I had to go when I see my dad. He's gone to the front row. I would pretend that I'm going into the church, and I would literally come out of the church and go and hang out with friends. We had a pastor's house quite close to the church then, so I would often go there as well and hang out with friends. So, and once it's time for end of service, I would just go back to the car and just pretend like I've just literally come out of the church. And it's quite amazing that he never even asked me what I learned from the church. So
Ah,
it's just, I think he trusted he trusted me.
trusted the
Not
leader as
even about
well.
trust. I think it's quite important as parents at this age, we don't leave that 100% responsibility for the Sunday school teachers or whatever, to teach our children. It's quite important to discuss, what did you learn today? The same thing when they come back from school. It's the same thing when they come back from church. How was the church Sunday school? What did you like about it? What did you understand? So, and those conversations never happened between myself and my dad. So I was able to get away with a lot.
It's I read that just thinking a few things I say to parents when I'm speaking to them is that you should never really force your children to do anything, because a
Yeah,
lot of times when we force them we get the short-term response, but
absolutely.
actually there's no deeper understanding or learning going on. So you
Mm,
want to encourage them and you want to help them get to the point of wanting to go to church. But
mm,
sometimes we feel like our job is done when we force you and get you there. But what happens when our children are forced and feel controlled? They just get cleverer at finding
absolutely.
ways to deceive us. We don't want that. So,
Yeah.
yes, this is so true. So, you talk about these friends that you ran into the arms of, if we're being honest, and just saying things like because you felt like things were missing
Mm,
in your heart, in your home, you ran into the arms of friends,
yeah.
or should we even say in some cases so-called friends, people who just attracted you for things that they wanted from you. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, so like I said, I felt, emptiness. I felt I was in love, insecure. I would say I was a people's pleaser, and and because I wasn't getting, that emotional attention from my house, I ran into people's hand. Like, for example, I remembered um, even one of my brother's friends, sometimes he would ring me and said to me, "Oh, Tolu, my friend likes you." And obviously, because I want that attention, I would go to my brother's friend's house or to this friend's house, to get that attention from them. On few occasions that happened. And looking back now, that is absolutely no, no, no. For me, it's a form of sexual exploitation that
Yeah.
people are not aware about. When you have a young person that is vulnerable, and you have somebody older calling them to come and make friends with older men, in exchange of for a gift or money, that is sexual exploitation. So at that time, I wasn't aware of it. So those are some of the kind of situation that I found myself in.
It's such I love the way you're so eager to get this message out there.
Yeah.
Because again, you have young girls and young boys that run out into other people's arms looking for something, and then you have older people, adults around them that honestly know better,
Yeah.
but end up exploiting these young people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it breaks my heart that recently I spoke to a lady, a young girl in Nigeria, and she said to me, she does this um, sh- like massage business, and she said to me that recently this rich guy puts it in thousands of money on his bed, and in an hope to have an exchange of sexual exchange with her. And this breaks my heart because she said to me that this person was probably in a 70. So these people are taking advantage of vulnerable young people because of lack of money, or because they're not getting emotional support for one reason or the other, and they're gifting them gifts to exchange for sex, which is completely wrong. So I just really wanted to say to parents, please teach your children, these things. They should not be receiving gift or money from anybody without your consent, and help them to know these things, to be aware of these issues.
It's true. And also just fill their tank, fill their
Absolutely.
emotional tank.
Yeah,
They don't feel the
absolutely.
need, to run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you cannot, I think one of the things that really affected me as well, because my dad was a giver, he would give, give, give. So there was no boundary. So when he says no, he rarely says no to me. Do you understand? So when he says no, I'm upset.
Yeah.
I just want that thing by all means. So it's okay for you as a parent to be able to say to your child, look, this thing you want, do you really need it? Help them to understand they don't have to receive or get everything they want, if they don't need it at that particular time.
Love
It's
that.
very important.
So listening to this, there are different, you might know that there are different parenting styles that have been documented, and some people swing from one to the next. But listening to you, it sounds like your dad may have fallen under the permissive parenting, or and there are different ways. Some people call it permissive, some people say indulgent, some people say neglectful. And what that basically means is giving the child what they want. Just, I don't want to deal with stress, anything you want. And it seems nice, but as you explained, it created a case where you didn't have boundaries. Also, not asking you where you've been, what did you learn? That again was just allowing you do whatever you want. And when a child doesn't get that kind of, really an authoritative figure, who can, ask you, and also even not forming a relationship, all that is permissive, indulgent, and in some cases considered neglectful. So it's just good for parents listening to realize that you really don't want to swing to that side. You want to be able to stand in. You are the authority in your home, and it doesn't mean you have to be a disciplinarian or a dictator, but it's okay, and it's important that you are the authority in your home.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I wanted to just ask you this. This really hit me when I read it, because obviously you're writing it as an adult, but you're writing it from the point of view of a young girl that you were at this time. And you said the more the more you gave yourself away, the more you felt insecure, rejected, and troubled. Wow.
Mm.
And I just thought those three words was so, the way you expressed them. How were you feeling? Insecure, rejected, and troubled. Just talk to us about that, please.
Wow. Yeah. Right. I, I think, for me, because obviously then, I'm a woman of faith now, and I know better that, I am complete in Christ Jesus. I know better now that it's only Jesus, God, that can satisfy all my needs, all of it, not man. And those days I didn't have that understanding. And like I said, the more I give myself away, in terms of relationship, even in terms of, even I'll say I didn't have luck when it comes to friends, because I realized most of my friends were with me because I was giving them stuff, I was giving them gifts they were able to take from me. And, that really, got me, um, you know, I felt alone, because the more I gave to them, some of my friends, the more I felt rejected, in terms of, they betrayed me, things that they were not supposed to do. They did it to me anyway, even though I gave it to them, and when it comes to relationship, the more I gave myself to, a sexual relationship with the opposite sex, he was never satisfying in any way, because you want to give more. And this is what young people need to understand, young adults. You need to abstain from sex before marriage, because the more you give yourself to the opposite sex, you feel insecure, because you're thinking, where is it going? Is he sleeping with somebody else? Oh, perhaps if I give him more of me, he will not look at another woman. So that's all a lie. And that just makes you feel so vulnerable and so empty, because you have everything to lose, because you've already given yourself anyway. So you want to give more, thinking that that would hold a man, but it's never going to.
Wow, so true. And I'm so glad that you've touched on that. And you even talk about staying in physically abusive relationships. And this sounds to me like, again, because you wrote in your book that you felt desperate for love. And so you stay in these relationships.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who might find themselves so desperate to receive love that they will go to whatever ends, including staying in a physically abusive relationship to get it?
Well, I would say you need to know that you as a person, you are special, you are valued. Nobody has the right to lay their hands on you, because you are treasured. You are special. So I would say to you right now, you need to just listen and leave that, relationship, seek for support as soon as possible, because everything about you is special, and nobody should be laying their hands on you or even shouting at you, because we have things that, emotional abuse as well, whereby, this is even more difficult to handle. Emotional abuse is quite traumatic as well. So please do not expose yourself to such situation any longer. Seek for help. Yeah.
Please, everyone listening out there, it's very important you do seek for help. Thank you so much for that, Tolu. I now really want to go to your transformation and your healing. I'm sitting here listening and speaking to someone that is completely healed. Guys, when you read the book, you will see the journey. It's such an important book to read, and it's an important book to get for young people as well to read. But let's talk about your healing and transformation.
You see how my smile just
I know, big smile.
I love to tell people about my wow, Jesus. I mean, this all started in 2008. I think when you've done everything, you've tried to feel belonged. You've you've dated. You had maybe alcohol. In my case, I never had tasted drug, but I did other things to make me feel accepted. And you see that the more you did those things, you're just going down the hill, and nothing is changing. At this point, I just thought, I remembered, how I was brought up. I remembered, Jesus, and I was in a place where I could rededicate my life back to Jesus. And I did in 2008 March. And since then, everything has just been, transformed. The to experience the love of God, the true love of God. I don't know how to explain it. If you haven't tasted the love of God, please just accept Jesus into your heart. It doesn't take you anything. That experience, willingly saying to Jesus, I surrender my heart to you. That was the beginning of my transformation.
Wow. And it's good because in your book, you have a prayer that people can read if they do want to accept Jesus into their hearts as well. I'm a Christian myself, and I'm sure you know that. And so I know the love you're talking about. And it's very hard for a non-Christian to understand what we're on about. But yes, those of us that know what it is, and encourage other people to,
I mean, I said to, when I speak to young people now, they want to look at me this funny way, like she's crazy. I tell them, look, I've not always been this crazy about Jesus. In fact, I rebelled because I'm coming to you now because I've tasted what the two, and I can see the difference in the two. So it's so important to fill our hearts with the love of God. It makes all the difference. It makes you feel complete.
It does, really. So I always like to talk to my guests about that. We've talked about how you were parented, talked about your childhood, and then how it affected you into adulthood. I always like to talk about your parenting, and you touched on that in your book as well. This book is complete. It has everything. You talked about your parenting. How did your childhood affect your parenting?
Wow. So one of the things, there's, loads, it affected my parenting in many ways, but I would speak to you on one. When I say God has a great sense of humor. When I had my daughter was, she's a child that she's full of affection, she would wake up in the middle of the night wanting to come and give me cuddle, she so much wanted, attention, affection, touching and all that. And I felt irritated when, at some point, I was like, I don't know how to handle this love. It's too much because I've never experienced such love before. And I recognize it, that I was struggling to give her that, that touching, because for me, when you say the word love, it takes me back to those days whereby I was only seeing love as sex. So if that makes sense. So I didn't really understand what. So I literally had to pray, and I said, Holy Spirit, help me to show love, affection to my daughter, because I don't know how to do it. And that simple prayer changed everything. Wow. So from there, gradually, because I'm aware of it, with effort as well, because it doesn't come easy.
No.
Effort, I will say to my kids, I love you, I will hold them. And, up to today, I still say to them every day. And I, always encourage them to say it back to me in return as well. And, my daughter says this so effortlessly because she's always been, that child that is so full of affection. Yeah, so absolutely.
Honestly, I read that part, and even now listening to you, my heart, just because I know this, our children are sent to teach us something about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And a lot of times, as parents, when we don't recognize that, we can actually find ourselves being angry with the child because they're touching at a raw, sensitive point of us that we don't want. But what you did, and what I encourage parents to do, is open up yourselves, let them teach you, let yourself learn from them.
Absolutely. And the other thing that that affected my parenting in a positive way, because growing up, I felt that I didn't have a safe place to express myself. I felt things was imposed on me. Nobody asked for my opinion. Nobody asked, do you want to go and spend this time with so and so? No, when I come back from holiday, because I went to a boarding school, one of my sisters, she's already waiting for me at home to just bamboozle me to her house, to go and stay there for holiday. Nobody cares to ask me, And so as a parent, I'm intentional about empowering my children to speak their mind.
Yes.
I even said to them, if mommy tell you to do something that it doesn't sit well with you, challenge mommy, but in a positive way. I even say to them, if you go to school and a teacher is telling you, do this, do that, and you don't feel comfortable with it, challenge it, but in a positive way. Right when they were very small, I intentionally, we have a box, it's called a telling box. So this box is, I place it, where they could both see it. And I always say to them, if you have anything to say to mommy, but you're too scared, because you have to acknowledge that some days they might be scared. And I say, if you're too scared to tell mommy, write it down in this box. Mommy will always check this box every night. I will read it, then we can talk about it. So let them, create this atmosphere that, they're able to come to you at any time to ask you any question, and their opinions matters. Ask for their opinion, ask for their suggestion. Yes, we are the parents. We ultimately, we have the final decision sometimes, but sometimes it's good to bring them into conversation because it empowers them. Their strength, their confidence, self-esteem is built up in that way as well.
That is so beautiful. It's so true and it's so beautiful. So I just want to thank you so much. And I'll encourage people again to definitely get your book, because we've all heard your pearls of wisdom here. There's so much more in the book. If I can just summarize what I feel like, I've heard you say, and something I believe so strongly, relationship is key.
Absolutely.
You start from the relationship from your dad to you, the impact it had, and then your relationship with your children and how you're building that relationship so that they can feel comfortable to talk to you. And then, of course, your relationship with God. Yeah. So if, parents can just be very intentional in understanding how building a closer relationship with their children and with God, if you're a person of faith, will really help you in your parenting. I just want to thank you so much for giving us your time, your wisdom. And if there's any final thing you'd like to say to our parents or the young people listening, please just tell us,
I mean, there's a lot to say, really, but I just want one thing that just came to my mind now. I didn't prepare for anything, but one thing that came to my mind right now is that parents, we need to be very, aware, sensitive of what our children are up to. We need to affirm them, recognize their strengths. What are they good at? Tell them, these things that they're good, they're beautiful. Sometimes I tell my daughter, my son, look into the mirror, tell yourself, I'm beautiful, I'm wonderfully made. Tell them these things so that they're not craving to look for this information, this affirmation from outside in the one place. So please, make time for your children, tell them you love them, recognize what they're good at, empower them, encourage them to speak words of affirmation over themselves, and you speak it to them as well as parents. And God help you. And to every young person out there, perhaps you're going through any form of challenges, please do not, dwell in that situation by yourself. There are supports out there. If you can't speak to your parents, look for a trusted adult that you can speak to. Don't be silent about any negative things that is affecting you, because you are loved, you are treasured. And God loves you. Bless you. Thank you so much, Tolu.
Thank you for listening to Parenting on Purpose podcast today.
Bye.
Remember to subscribe, leave a rating, and share with a parent who cares. You can follow me on Instagram at abiara.bolu, where I post tips and videos regularly to help you on your parenting journey. Let's do this together for our kids.